Welcome back. Today with me is Calm Night. Like, who writes 15 books? This guy is on another level. Today we're going to be talking about something that I think is very important and yet very, very underrated. You could have all the motivation you want in the world and still not do stuff. We know some of the most inspired people, they go live every day, they do things, but they don't achieve stuff. So, what is the difference between busy and getting stuff done? This speaker has spent a decade studying the brain and studying the brilliance of the brain and how the brain is designed to keep us safe, but in so doing, it's keeping us small, it's keeping us where we are. And so, really, the topic for today is how do you get out of your own way? Because goodwill does not mean that you're going to do the thing. You could have all the goodwill you want and still not do what you're trying to do. Why do people procrastinate? Why do people have resistance in doing the things that they know they should do? Why are people that are obese having resistance about doing the thing that they know they need to do to lose the weight? Think about all of the things that we know we should be doing and we are not doing. Why? We are not bad people. It's not like we don't want success. It's not like we don't want to do those things. But something is definitely pulling us backwards. It's like we're getting in our own way. And I've had experts here that talk strategy. I have had experts here that talked about many things. But I really haven't had someone talk to the brain and how the brain is designed to keep us where we are. And today is that day where I get to interview Cam Knight through his thought leadership, through his work, and hopefully step by step, we can understand exactly what he does and how he can help us. Mr. Cam, welcome to the show. I'm honored to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
As I was going round and round and trying to talk about what you do, what did you wish I said in a sentence that would tell people exactly what you do instead of me going round and round and round?
Okay, so I'll just give a brief introduction and
Mm,
how I came up with the concept of internal resistance. So
mm,
my name is Cam Knight. I am a coach, international speaker, and author of a dozen books in the area of mental performance and personal mastery. So I've written books on speed reading, memory, as well as concentration, as well as self-talk, visualization, and goal setting. And for as far back as I can remember, I've been a fairly driven individual. It's kind of hard not to be living in a culture or society with so much personal development content and everyone telling you to do more, be your best self, and reach for the stars. As a result, I've always wanted to do more, have more, and be more in life. And although I've had my fair share of success, I always felt like I missed the mark or fell short, or that the success took much more effort and had involved a lot more stress than it needed to. And I always wondered why. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it? At the time, there were no clear answers. The best answer I heard was, you don't have good beliefs or you don't have motivation and discipline. And yes, all those things are part of the equation, but I always felt like there was more to it. And over that past 15 years, that question always lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this damn thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars attended, the more I learned about the complexities of the brain. And over time, I started to realize, hey, wait a minute. There's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. A part of our mind is built to keep us from growing. And I call this part resistance. It's the brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it.
like, really, that's interesting. So how did you even come to this? Like, if I am a procrastinator, I think this conversation is for you if you're a procrastinator. If in your heart, God knows your heart, you want to do everything, But you wake up and you go, where did my day go? Like you didn't do most of the things that you wanted to do. This is really for you, or for someone that you know is a procrastinator. Or maybe it's for your partner and you're like, man, why can't you just get stuff done? Give me the description of what needs to be happening in my life to know that resistance is my problem. Like, what are the 3 things or so that need to be happening in my life for me to go, oh my God, this is for me. Like, this interview is for me because I have seen this, I have seen this, I have seen this. How does that present in the real world?
So if a person is not able to do what they want to do, then that means resistance in their life. It is very simple and clear cut as that. Though it really helps to understand what's kind of going on. So one part of our brain creates wants and desires, and it's creating endless wants one after another. And a separate part of the brain actually looks at the want to see if it's worth doing. So this is really important. So I'm going to say again, the part of the brain that creates wants and desires works separately and independent of the part that allows you to act on that desire. So you have one part that's creating wants and another part that checks to see if that want is safe and worth doing or doable. So the part that creates wants, it doesn't look to see if the want is achievable, if it's achievable for you, or if it's going to be fulfilling. It simply creates wants. And so that means that the other part actually evaluates the want. And what that means is that anytime a decision, option, or course of action stands before you, that decision gets analyzed by the brain using a whole host of criteria. And if the decision or action is not in line with the criteria, your brain will prevent action. So you can think of standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Every decision that comes up must go through them. If even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. So each member that evaluates a decision is like a criteria the mind evaluates. So it doesn't matter how much motivation you have, how simple the solution is, or even how much benefit you can derive. What matters is understanding what resistance is, why it's there, and how it shows up. And only when a person understands these things can they make progress. And when they don't understand these things, it's usually why they're feeling stuck or have challenges.
That's interesting because it brings me to, I thought this was the thing for men. So my husband, the way he's wired is if you ask him to do something, he'll be like, no problem, he'll do it. And then he'll sit around and he'll look around and he'll measure. Are you happy? Are you excited? Did this make a difference? Blah, 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 blah. And then he will make a decision in his head that this is worth doing again. Oh, this is not worth doing again. And it's a game he plays in his head. And I look at him and I go, dude, it's happening again. And so I thought that it was a thing for men where I think every time I ask him to do something, he's rolling in his head and going, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? But what you're saying is that this is inherently in every human being.
It's in all of us. Anytime a decision comes up, the brain evaluates it. And the part of the brain that creates the decision, or more or less a part of the brain that creates a want or desire, it's independent of the part that allows you to act on it. Which is why we can have motivation and desire for something, but still not be able to do it. Because the part of the brain that's creating the motivation and desire isn't the one that's allowing you to act on it. It's a different part. And so I know a lot of people have things that they want to do, but then they get stuck as to why, and they wonder, why can I do it? It's like, I want this thing. And as I said earlier, it's like, why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire, but why can't I do it? Is because they keep hitting against this part that evaluates a decision to see if it's worth doing, or if it's safe, or if it's fulfilling, and all of that. And when I was growing up, I used to think whoever created this reality, or humans, whether it was aliens, God, or evolution, I used to think like they must be really sick and twisted, because how could they make us have a want for something, but at the same time keep us from going after it? Like, that just sounds like a really terrible thing to do to a person or a life form. Like, have them like be pumped up with motivation, but then prevent them from going after it. But when you look at it this way, it makes a lot more sense. It's like, oh, okay, it's just two different parts of the brain that are working and not necessarily in sync. And as I mentioned, the part of the brain that creates a wants and desires, it doesn't check to see if it's achievable, if it's doable, if you're capable of it. All it does is create the wants. It's the other part that checks to see if all of that is possible. And you said something that's really interesting about, is it worth it? And at the most fundamental level, that's what this part that checks to see if your want is worth going after is doing, is checking to see. It's like, if I do this, will I get the fulfillment that I'm seeking? If I do this, will it bring me the joy that I am hoping for? And if I do this, how much effort is it going to be required to get to be able to finish and complete it to get that joy and things like that. So that's at the most basic level of what's going on. But resistance works on a much deeper and more complicated level. For example, one of the criteria that evaluates has to do with self-image. And so many people have created the self-image of themselves as being smart, intelligent, tech savvy, or that they're a great artist, musician, comedian, or they have this great story. But they'll rarely study, apply their skill, or put themselves out there, because if they face difficulty or things don't go well, they have to confront the fact that they're not this great self-image that they created for themselves. So it's much easier to not do the thing and hold on to that self-image and then to actually do it and face the possibility that they're not this great self-image that they created. So this is like one of the more complicated reasons for why resistance comes up. And there's more like that. If you like, I could talk a little bit more about that.
I would love to kind of understand, first of all, the resistance. What I would like to understand is, so there's a department that is creating a desire. Okay, that could be a desire to fall off a building and kill yourself. And there is a part of the brain that says, really? Really? Like my husband can wake up and say, oh, we should go to the Bahamas. And I'm like, okay, how soon? And it's like, in a month, in a week. And I'm like, okay. Then I go to the accounts, I look at the visas and I go like, really? Like, no, I don't think so. And so I think that's the same thing that is happening. It's more like, oh, I want to do this. I want to jump off the road. Okay. And then there's a part that is saying, like, really? Why would you do that? So give me kind of the criteria, like what is the brain, what is the panel looking for? Is it safety? Is it worth it? Is it congruency? Is it like, what is the brain scanning and judging for to then end up at a place where it says, nope, you're not doing this? Like, what is the other, or like, what are the departments involved that come to a conclusion of whether something will be done or not? Because I feel like I need to understand that part of the brain. Like, maybe what are the buckets, or what is that decision criteria that needs to happen for a decision to be allowed in? Or like, I feel like there is this order, do this, I want to do this desire, and then there is execution. We're going to do it or we're not going to do it. So I feel like there are departments, and I'm trying to find out how they communicate to each other for the decision on the other end to go, it's getting done or it's been declined and it's not going to be done. Yeah, take me there.
Yeah, that's a very great question. So as I mentioned, anytime a decision stands before you, the mind evaluates it using a whole host of criteria. And it goes through a bunch of different criteria or checklists of, should we do this? And some of the more commonly things it looks at is things like limiting beliefs, our habits, and comfort zones. But then it goes into deeper things, like I had just mentioned, the self-image. One of the things it evaluates is, okay, I'm trying to hold this self-image of being this smart person. Will this support me looking like a smart person, or will this have the potential to damage my self-image? If it has a potential to damage my self-image or go against my self-image, then I won't be able to do it. Another criteria has to do with core needs. So as we humans have these core needs, such as love, affection, attention, as well as physical contact. And some of these needs are deeply ingrained into us, like the need for a mother's love or a father's guidance. And when we don't get, when these needs are not met, it's painful. It's extremely painful. It's a kind of pain that can make a person go crazy. That's how core and ingrained these needs are. Now, if growing up, we didn't have these needs met, and the brain realizes that these needs can't be met, won't be met, or it's too dangerous and risky to be met, it will prevent us from going after it, right? That makes sense. The problem is, since these are core needs, they don't go away. They get louder and stronger and more painful. And since the brain really thinks or feels that these needs can't be met, the only choice it has is to distract us from it. And there are many ways our brain will distract us. And one of the ways is to keep us from doing or accomplishing anything. So our mind is always focused on problems instead of this pain. And I have a really quick story to share about this. You know, I knew somebody who wanted the love of his dad, but his dad never gave it to him. And it was painful for him. It hurt him a lot. So much so that his mind made him live a hectic life, living paycheck to paycheck, never being able to make ends meet. And the reason his mind did that is because as long as he wasn't finishing, accomplishing anything, that meant that his life wasn't good. And as long as his life wasn't good, his mind could distract him from the pain of problems versus the pain of not receiving his dad's love. And you see this a lot with people who have trauma, PTSD, or even sexual abuse. If they haven't addressed the pain around it, their mind will sabotage them and create a difficult life just to avoid the pain from these events. So this is another criteria the mind will look at. It's like, hey, I'm trying to block you from certain pains, and one of the ways to do that is to keep your life difficult. And if I'm going to keep your life difficult, and what are some ways we can keep your life difficult? And it's going to be, well, we'll just sabotage you, we'll keep you procrastinating, so you never get things done, you never make ends meet, and things like that. So that's another criteria. And there's a lot that we can talk about. Yeah, so that's for now. I'll let you see if you have any more questions.
I like it. I like it. There's a checklist. And everyone that I've interviewed was like, it's programming, conditioning, or trauma. And that really has us in an operating system that, in as much as we may want what we want, there's an operating system that we're running, and maybe that doesn't support whatever we're trying to do. But what you're saying is, think of it like a checklist. What are the beliefs that you hold? What are the habits that you have in place? What is the conditioning that is happening? What is your self-identity? What are the values that you have? What are your core needs? What happened in the
all
past?
All of those matters. Right.
Because all the decision has to meet the person you are with all of your beliefs and all of that. The problem with growth is it's the fast way to challenge where you have been. Like, you're trying to be something else. You're trying to go somewhere else. You're trying to earn a new, whatever, level of paycheck. And this is not in your system. It's not in your beliefs yet. It's not in your identity yet. And so the body is going to be, the brain is going to say like, yeah, but this thing over here doesn't conform to the familiarity of this system that you have. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So now that I know how the brain is making its decisions, how do I move from the familiar to the unfamiliar territories and beat procrastination?
So this is what makes doing things and taking action and progress and success very challenging. It isn't a simple blanketed solution. Like the brain evaluates all these things, and all of these things have to be in line. So if your beliefs are off, you got to work on the beliefs. If your habits aren't in line, then you got to start developing the habits. If your self-image, if what you're trying to do goes against your self-image or has a potential to damage your self-image, then we got to work around that. If it's dealing with the core pains, then we got to work on the core pains. And what's really interesting that a lot of people have challenges, they'll do what they're told that they should do. Like if they read a book that talks about how important beliefs are, they work on their beliefs and they still find that they're stuck. they think, well, I did what I was told, but I still can't move forward. Or if a person takes a next step and works on their self-image or their authority issues or some of the other things, and they still keep hitting that wall, it's because they're still checking off some of the boxes, and there's other boxes that need to be checked off. So I want people to understand it isn't here, just do this and it'll take care of all of your problems. It's first looking at what your resistance is and working on that. And then another aspect of it actually has to do with our wants, because our wants can one of the challenges to not being able to do what we want to do isn't necessarily the resistance itself, but it's the want itself. And by that, what I mean is that the part of the brain that creates wants and desires, it's completely unrestrained. It's creating endless wants one after another. The only job of this part of the brain, which I call the wanting mechanism, is to create wants. And it's cranking out wants day after day at a pace faster than anyone can achieve. You can think of the wanting mechanism like a simple on-off switch that gets flipped based on certain cues. It sees someone with nice shoes and it wants it. The latest iPhone comes out, it wants that too. Someone attractive walks by and it wants that as well. The wanting mechanism creates so many wants in a single day, no one person has the time, energy, or bandwidth to achieve in a lifetime. Even if you live multiple lives, you couldn't achieve, let alone enjoy, all the wants that your brain is producing. That's because our wanting mechanism doesn't understand that our time and energy are limited. It simply creates wants. Nor does it check to see if our want is achievable or even enjoyable. It simply creates wants. Even while we're working on one want, our mechanism is creating other wants to chase. The wanting mechanism is a reason why people chase things that aren't fulfilling, crave things that aren't going to be enjoyable. And it's a reason why people will cheat when they're already in a relationship. And it's also the reason why it's so hard to do the work and we get fallen into self-sabotage as well as procrastination, because our wants is pulling us in all these directions that is difficult to move in anyone. So to answer or circle back to your question about, how do we move past it? I said we have to look at some of the causes of resistance and then work on that directly. But then we also have to look at the wants and work through how our wants are limiting us. And I can go over a few ways how our want affects us. One of the ways is having an overactive want. This is where our mind creates all sorts of desires all the time. This is often referred to as shiny object syndrome, where a person sees something and then they want it. They hear about something and they want that too. And in fact, they don't have to hear or see about anything. Their want is pulling them in different directions. Even before they can even start on one want, their mind is pulling them in other wants. So that's one aspect of the wanting mechanism that makes it challenging. Another aspect is having a strong want, where a person wants something really, really bad. This is often referred to as having a burning desire, and many coaches and experts talk about burning desire and why it's important. But I would disagree, because when our want grows, so does our resistance. And a great analogy for this would be Einstein's theory of relativity. So one of Einstein's theories, the theory of special relativity, says something really interesting, which is that space and time are not separate. They're one and the same. So the three dimensions of space, north, south, east, west, and up and down, and time are actually the same fabric. In fact, scientists and physicists don't refer to space and time as separate entities, but they call it space-time. And in many ways, our wants and resistance, they're one and the same. It's the same fabric. What that means is that when our want grows, so does our resistance. And our resistance growing makes our want grow even more. And that in turn makes the resistance grow even further. And very quickly it becomes a feedback loop where you want this thing really bad and can't have it really bad. And so these are just a couple examples of how our own wants can get in the way. And so if a person, then we have to look at where the person resides in terms of his wants. Does he have an overactive want? Does he have a strong want? Does he have an immediate want or a conflicting want? and address that as well.
That's interesting. I want you to go back, but before going back, I want you to explain to me this part. My husband can create or can have, I kid you not, more than 100 business ideas that are valid every day. And if I don't tell him, dude, no more. He has the ability to sit down and have a business idea that is valid minute after minute after minute. When I first met him, every 5 minutes, he was telling me a new business idea. And I was like, at some point, I said, okay, you're going to create a Twitter account and you're going to put all those things there, or you're going to write them in a book. Like, I don't have the memory or capacity to see all of those ideas. So walk me through what's happening in his brain. And I now he's stopped sharing the ideas. So I wonder where he's taking them. Because my brain can't contain so much, but his brain keeps this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, dude, there has to be another way that those ideas can be captured. Like, I am not the memory bank for them. Walk me through what's happening for him, because I feel like I'm probably not supporting him enough with that.
Right. So it sounds like, just from the little that you have said, that he has an overactive wanting mechanism where his brain's creating desires one after another all the time. And for him, the desires show up not as a desire for ice cream, a desire for coffee, and then a desire for having a nice car. His wanting mechanisms or desires are for a business idea, and then another business idea, and then another business idea. So he has an overactive wanting mechanism where he wants to do all these different things. And I suspect that he's not starting on any of them. And if a want comes up, before he can even think about how to achieve that want, another want comes up. And before he can even start that want, another want comes up. And so this is really challenging for someone who has an overacting wanting mechanism, because their brain is constantly stimulated and triggered by all these different wants. And what really helps is to contain or to ground the wanting mechanism. And the way to do that is to pick one want and cut out the rest. No matter what other wants your brain is creating, or in his case, no matter what other ideas his brain is creating, to not think about or worry about or consider any of them until the first is finished or complete. Now, this isn't easy to do, especially for someone with an overactive wanting mechanism, because we don't necessarily choose our wants. It gets stimulated and then it gets triggered. And if for someone with an overactive wanting mechanism, it's getting triggered all the time. So what really helps is to contain the stimuli or trigger. And that can mean, cutting out media, television, and even people, because seeing people do and have things can create jealousy and make us want to have and do what they have. And I'll share a personal story. The reason I know so much about the overactive wanting mechanism is because most of my life I had an overactive wanting mechanism. It's the reason I've traveled to over 100 countries. I've written over 12 books. I've done all sorts of activities like snowboarding, scuba diving, rock climbing, dancing, and all of that, is because I would get stimulated by my wanting mechanism to do everything that there was to do. If I saw a nice car, I wanted it. If a pretty girl walked by, I wanted her too. Anything I saw on television, I wanted as well. And the wants were very overpowering. They would consume my awareness so much that I would forget other wants I was working on, or I would quickly lose interest in them. And what I realized is I needed to contain the mechanism. And the way I did that is pretty much with the suggestion I just gave, which is I cut out television, commercials, social media, YouTube. I even went as far as to stop reading personal development, because just learning new ideas would stimulate my wanting mechanism. And I even cut out people from my life and essentially created a bubble that contained as much of the stimuli as possible. Now, I know this is a bit extreme, but for a person who has an overacting wanting mechanism, like I just described, as well as seems like your husband, I think this is not only the best solution, but more than likely the only solution. Otherwise, their minds are just going to keep pulling them in different things, and they'll have all these great ideas, but none of them will be ever put into practice and nothing gained from them.
That's really interesting. That would be the death of him. Like cutting off social media, cutting off reading, cutting off all this. That would be getting a bullet and putting it in his head. But I also do wonder, because sometimes ideas are really good. And so sometimes I wonder if that's because I never know what's coming. Some I'm like, okay, that's not happening. But then some ideas are like really good. Because I don't have that, I can like go, no, that's really good. But then if he stops creating, if he stops wanting them, I would never see them because I don't have that ability or whatever that thing is. And so I wonder if doing that would be shutting down his dreams, because I never know when the right idea is coming through. And so as he's joking, he says, my business model is this. I'm sat in the bed. I have 100 people around me. And I keep saying, go do this. Go execute this thing. Go execute this thing. So I think he's like an idea generator, if it makes sense, which, I don't know, maybe can be model for him, or there's, I don't know, and there's also the distraction bit. And so I was just wondering if he's just like, that's the superpower. Just create and let the executors, like for me, I'm an executor, but I'm not a creator. And so if you give me a very good idea, a very good plan, I will take it to the bank. But he is the fountain for the ideas. And so I've been really wondering if it's just his superpower and he just has to sit there and turn it into a business on its own.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I have a couple of things to say about it. First is that our superpowers can be our Achilles heel. So too much of anything can become its opposite. So he can have great ideas, but if they're coming out rapid fire all the time, he's not able to implement it. So obviously, if he can't implement it, it's becoming a crutch. So he might have this amazing brain to come up with really great ideas that can do well, but if he's not putting it into practice, it really doesn't, go anywhere. The second thing I want to say is that a lot of people who come up who are great at generating ideas, they kind of get this high, like, oh, wow, look how smart I am, intelligent I am, or how creative I am. And they can get caught in that high because they get this positive feedback from generating great ideas. Their brain gets caught in that. It's like, oh, this is a good thing. So I'll just keep creating more ideas and keep getting this positive affirmation and reinforcement for people of how creative and intelligent I am. And the other thing about people who tend to be really great ideas or generators, because they think they've created a really great idea, that they've done that's all they needed to do. Like now they've put their mark in society. They have stamped their name in history, and now they can enjoy the rest of their life because they came up with this great idea. So it's important to understand that, yes, it's really good skill, and it requires a certain level of creativity, intelligence to come up with great ideas, but it's not a unique skill. Like a lot of people are great at coming up with ideas. What really matters is your ability to be able to implement that idea and take it from beginning to the end, and not just start the idea or get all the way to the finish, but actually finish and keep going. That's what really determines the people who are successful or the people who have the ability to get things done versus not. So I think it's really important for a person who's a great idea generator to not get caught in the fact that they're a great idea generator, and not think that, oh, okay, just because they can come up with great ideas, that's all that is asked from them. It's really the ability to implement, and that's like the harder part. Another thing I want to say about this is that it's actually, remember how I said that when resistance comes up, it doesn't necessarily tell us that it's stopping us. It stops us in very manipulative ways. So more or less, when resistance is trying to say, no, you can't do this, it's not going to say, hey, Prima, this thing that you're trying to do, it goes against our habits. And so we're just going to stand here and do nothing. Or,
Mm,
this thing that you want to work on, well, it's a challenge to our self-image. So resistance uses manipulative tricks. And it has all sorts of tricks up its sleeves. And one of the tricks that it has is that before you start on something, it'll create another idea to pull you towards. And before you start on that, it create another idea to pull you towards. So it's actually
mm,
one of the tricks that resistance is using to keep a person from doing something is as long as they keep creating new wants, they'll never
mm,
start on or get deep in any one of them. I hope that made
mm.
sense.
It did. I want to take you a little bit back to, like you said, sometimes you have trauma or I don't know, any type of it. Maybe it was abandonment or sexual abuse, or there is like some unresolved things from your childhood or from your past that give you, I don't know, maybe you didn't get enough love from your parents or something happened there. And what then happens for you is you get into this state of avoidance. And so you can get yourself bankrupt to distract you from the vacuum. I want you to talk more to that because I felt like that was really good. And I don't know if people got that. I want people to catch that
Yeah.
lesson because I felt like that was a very good one. Sometimes the struggle is a distraction from the actual problem. And so what we need to do is to go back and uproot the roots. Would you love to give more context to that?
Oh, yeah. This one is actually a big one. And I do want to say that first, that most of us have experienced trauma. When I was growing up, I had a lot of trauma and I thought I was the only one. I would watch
Mm,
television and all the characters had these good, great families where parents were really nice to them and they attended to their needs and things like that. And I thought that was the norm. But as I have been doing my own work and coaching and helping people heal, I'm
mm,
realizing the norm is trauma. Like most people have experienced a lot of it, much more than they're willing to admit, and much more than they might realize is happening. And
mm,
two, I want to say that trauma is relative. So one person can have a similar response to something, a light event happening, than someone who to an extreme event.
mm,
And so it doesn't matter what the situation is, what matters is our emotional response to it. So
mm,
let's say somebody gets into a fender bender. That could be a very traumatic experience, as if a similar emotional response as somebody who grew up with a really tough childhood with a lot of abuse.
mm,
And it's easy for the one person to think, well, that was just a fender bender. Like, why is it whatever? It doesn't matter what the event was, it was our emotional response to it. So that's really important to understand as well. Now, when we have trauma, it kind of gets locked in our mind and body, and it secretly runs our life. And a lot of people who have trauma, they can't imagine that its traumatic event or the stuff that happened in their past is affecting them right here and now. The way the brain works is it doesn't make that connection for them. They just have these destructive behavior, self-sabotaging behavior, procrastinating behavior, and they think it's because they're either lazy or that there's something wrong with them. And it's not that they're lazy and it's not that there's something wrong with them, it's just that their past is affecting their life today. And it's really important for a person to go back and to work through and deal with the trauma. Because if they don't, then it's going to continue to run their life. And the challenges that they're experiencing right now is a direct result of it. And you can't necessarily outwail it or outsmart it or outpush it. You have to go back to it. And one of the reasons it's difficult to go back to it is because there's pain there. There's all sorts of pain. The pain can come from
mm,
pain of embarrassment, the pain of shame, the pain of guilt, the pain of other emotions. And instead of looking at, addressing, and feeling those pains, we try to avoid it. But avoiding only can help us so much before it starts affecting our lives in negative ways. And even more, trauma manifests many ways. For some person, it could be in their productivity. So they end up procrastinating and self-sabotaging and never being able to make ends meet. But for other people, it shows up different ways. It could show up in their diet where they can overeat, not eat enough. And essentially, I had a mentor who said our diet can be an abuse to ourselves, and that abuse can come from trauma, or it can come through like mental and emotional strain. So it's not just a matter of productivity, it shows up other ways where it affects our life. And if somebody is stuck, whether it's in their health, it's in their career, it's in their finances, it's likely a result of some trauma that happened to them that they haven't addressed with. And they might not even think it's the trauma, but it's really, orchestrating their life to this day. I hope that made sense. I know I threw a lot out, but I think
No,
those
no, it
were
really
like
does make
really
sense.
foundational stuff.
Tell me more about personality disorders and how these relate to the work you do, the brain work and all of that. Because somebody decides I am dyslexic or I am PS whatever, or I am whatever, I have ADHD. Give me an idea of that, whatever people call the personality disorder, versus what you see it to be in your world or brain and trauma and all of those things.
Yeah.
What's your view? What's your lens of personality disorders? Where do they come from?
Yeah.
And what can people do about that?
Sure. So I have done a lot of work. As I said, I've traveled to over 100 countries, and it wasn't just, fun and games. I was working with shamans in the jungles of Colombia. I was working with healers all over, and I have met a lot of different people and I've encountered a lot of different modalities and a lot of different thinking. And so I don't like to say what is or isn't, but I had one mentor who didn't believe in disorders. Like his teaching was, we don't believe in disorders. We all think his model was it's emotional and it's past stuff. And in many ways, I would have to agree, especially with as much people I have worked with, and I have, helped with their healing and, with the various tricks, with the various techniques and modalities that I have. And it always comes down to some inner stuff that's going on that's creating the behavior that they're experiencing. So I don't think it's like something that they're born with or it's genetic. It's usually something that happened or didn't happen. What I mean by that, it's like a traumatic event happened, or they didn't receive the love, guidance, and nurturing that we humans are built to receive to function as a whatever normal is, as a normal functioning adult. So there's another component that doesn't get talked about, and I think is as equally as important. It's our food and diet. Our food and diet these days, it's hard to say, but it's just terrible. Like what people put inside their bodies, it's very damaging and is having all sorts of effects on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And again, it's kind of like trauma, where when people had trauma, we don't realize how it's affecting us right now. And it's the same with what people are eating. They don't realize how it's creating the challenges they are, but it is contributing to a lot of it. And the state of the world, and I've traveled to over 100 countries, so I've seen what people are eating and what's actually available. There really isn't really good, healthy options that our body is built to have and that nourishes it. A lot of it is packaged food, and anything that's packaged, it's going to have all sorts of chemicals, such as added flavors, colors, preservatives, stabilizers, and all these things. And these are chemicals that our body wasn't built to have, but we're putting it in at huge quantities that it is creating these challenges. Now, when you mix the two, if you have trauma, you didn't get the love and attention that you needed or the guidance, and then you're putting in unhealthy chemicals inside you, all of that can really come together to create havoc in our lives. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me was all of these things. Like although I was doing my personal work, I was still having challenges. And I didn't realize until later on how much diet was contributing to it. And so diet can make things that are already bad even worse. And you can work on the traumatic part, but if we're not working on the diet, we might not fully get to where we're trying to go.
And I want to throw there a disclaimer, like we're really just sharing from our own experiences and what we've gone through and what we've seen and the mentorships we've gone through. And so this is not to label anybody and everybody, but we're just sharing from our own experiences, and if that helps you, great. And if it doesn't, then it's fine. Like we're just putting a disclaimer out there because we're really just showing up to offer our best lessons from our tears and frustrations. And so don't mark Brian, don't mark me, don't mark Cam for anything they say that doesn't agree or that is not congruent with your beliefs or what you've gone through. This is not for everybody, but for someone it's going to be helpful, and for another person it's not going to be helpful. And so please use this information wisely. My personal experience or my personal, you wanted to bring in something?
I wanted to add to that. The human brain is so complex. There isn't the one size fit all solution or one size fit all reason for our problems. That's the important thing, that if anybody gets anything out of what I'm saying. And so if what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. There are other, we're so complex, there may be other things going on for you and that have helped you, and that's okay. And at the same time, for somebody who's tried everything and they don't know why they're still stuck or they're still struggling, some of the things that we're talking about now may be things that can help them, or maybe that's worth looking into. So again, to reiterate, we are so complex. Think about it. There's millions of psychologists and therapists around the world, and we're all trying to understand the brain and the mind and the human condition, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface of it. That's how complex we are. So we can't limit ourselves to thinking it's just one way or the other way, and if it's something works for us, it'll work for everybody. That's just not the way it is. But how it is that different people have come to different conclusions on works, and a lot of time it's for them. And if it applies to you, then maybe you can try it. If you know it's not right for you, then maybe you look elsewhere.
This is good, because when I look at people and they say he's a narcissist, what I really look at is somebody that has unresolved, maybe pain, damage, maybe trauma. I don't believe that anyone wakes up and says, I am going to be a narcissist. I think that is just something showing up that is a representation of something deeper on the inside. When somebody decides, I am, I don't know, super ADHD, okay, you can be ADHD. I'm not even a scientist or whatever, but I believe the food you're eating, your behavior or your habits, what you're consuming, social media, like I believe that you can, whatever the thing is that you probably think you have, you can do something to maybe thrive with it. Like, so you're a narcissist. Okay. If you could just stop being a narcissist and just kind of go, I'm very curious, why am I a narcissist? If you can even get to a point where you say I'm a narcissist, like, why? Like, why am I like this? Where does this come from? How can I begin to trace the meaning? What do I have the power to do? I believe that everybody can change their life if they would become very curious with the way, I don't know, the way things, because I feel like the body is always giving us information. When you're sad, the body is saying something. When you're anxious, the body is saying something. When you're procrastinating, that's information. When you're like, there's always information, but it's like people never stop. Why do I have a headache? That's not like, oh, go grab a painkiller. Like, what is the body saying? Why did I get like food poisoning? What is the body saying that I am not getting? Like, what do I have a fever? Like, for me, when I get a fever, I go, what is burning up my body? Like, what is my body trying to process that is causing all this temperature? And
Yeah.
Before I go to the doctors, I kind of have to first sit with myself and go, okay, what is my body saying to me? And I don't know, but I feel like a lot of people miss that and they go to the next solution. I've read books, had coaches, and my problem is not going away. I'm still procrastinating. What do I need? Is there like a checklist? Like to say, okay, have you checked this? Have you checked this? Because I could consume everything and still not get to the root of my problem. And so I was just wondering if we assumed that someone was self-coaching or using their inner guru to kind of go, I'm going for this and this and this, and assuming that we couldn't get on a coach who would be like, let's distill it down. This is the problem. Like if somebody was to guide themselves, even to know like what's the coach I need, how would you look at, I have done this, done this, done this, done this. Man, I am still procrastinating. What would be your guidance in as far as where to look? Because we don't even know where to.
So you said a lot of really important stuff. So I'm going to rip on a couple things and then I'll answer this question. The body is always communicating to us. And that's actually one of the main purposes of our emotions. When people think of emotions, they think of like the pain that they experience. Emotions aren't there. It's actually there to guide and protect and warn. And when stuff like sadness is coming up or anger is coming up or hurt is coming up, it's not the universe trying to make your life bad, but your body saying, hey, something needs attention. Unfortunately, we haven't been taught to pay to our emotions or the signals that we're getting from our body. Instead, people have taught us to pay attention to them, and once they have our attention, they want to sell us something. So we have lost this innate ability as humans to have a communication with our own selves of like what's going on, like why do I have this headache? Why do I have this pain and strain? And instead, we've been taught to just pop a pill and not focus on it. So this is really important that you said. It's important to get back into listening to the communication that we're receiving. Now, what a person can do, like I said, when it comes to overcoming resistance, it's not a blanketed approach that a person can take. It's not like, hey, just do this one thing and you'll get over all your struggles. One, we have to look at our wants. Like, how is our want getting in the way of our success? And I kind of described a couple of ways our want shows up. One is overactive wants, one is strong wants. And then we need to look at what's stopping us. And because we're so complex, there's a lot of things that are stopping us. In my course, I kind of go through all the different things, the checklist that the mind goes through, and to decide whether to let us do something or not. So if a person is trying to figure out, hey, what are some of the items on the checklist, they can go over there, as it'd be too much to talk about in this podcast. Another thing is to look at how they get stopped. So is a person really good at getting inspired? We talk a little bit about this with the wanting mechanism. A person can get inspired to start something, but before starting, they get inspired by something else. And before starting that, they get inspired by something else. So their solution would be to pick one want and cut out the rest. Like I said, don't think about, don't worry about, and don't consider any other things you're inspired to do until the first one is finished or completed. And that's their solution. If a person is good at starting, but they end up stopping before they make progress, then they need a different approach. And the approach that I use there is something I learned from meditation. There's many forms of meditation, but in one way or another, a lot of them are focused around clearing their thoughts. Now, a lot of times when a person is meditating, they're clearing their thoughts and thoughts pop up, they get frustrated or they beat themselves up. So the trick to meditation isn't to actually keep your thoughts clear the whole time. It's when the thoughts come back to clear them and jump right back to where you started. So if a person, their challenge is where they start a lot of things, but they don't take it far, is anytime they stop to jump right back in. And it's going to happen. It happens to all of us. And then they try to make progress for as long as they can. And if they stop and fall off, don't worry and beat yourself up. Just jump back in and keep jumping back in until they get to the finish. Now, if a person is good at starting things and making progress, but somehow they stop before getting to the finish or they sabotage themselves before getting to the finish, for that person, it's really important to build the muscle of completing things. So this is an interesting concept, but the way our body is built, whatever we need to do, we need to build a muscle for it. In order to talk English, we need to build a muscle for talking that way. In order to get up and grab a glass of water, we need to build a muscle for it. And we also need to build the muscle to finishing things. And if a person has never really taken a task or a goal, start all the way to completion of finishing things, so anytime they get to the finish line, they end up sabotaging themselves and don't reach it. And in these instances, they have to do whatever they can to will themselves to complete anything they start. And I'll give a great story about this. Several years ago, I took on the ambitious goal of writing 2 books. I thought it was just going to take me years because I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm putting so much time on writing. I'm not getting any reward. I could be using that time for something that could be generating revenue or bringing an immediate reward, and I didn't. But the reason I put myself through the pain and strain is because I wanted to build the muscle of finishing things, taking what I start and bringing it all the way to the end. And I do that with anything. Like if I start something, I make sure no matter what, I finish it, because the more I have completed things, the easier it has become to complete other things. So that's the next challenge a person might have. And finally, a person could be good at finishing things, but then they fall off once they get to the end. And this is where we see the pattern of yo-yo dieting is people will work out and work hard to get to their ideal weight, but once they get there, they stop doing the things that got them to their ideal weight, and then they'll go into the pattern of yo-yo. And for a person who is good at finishing things, but then they lose motivation to keep it up after they've achieved it, what they need to understand is that success is much harder to keep than it is to achieve. This is really important, so I'm going to say it again. Success is much harder to keep than to achieve. So you can put in all the motivation and get to the end result you want, but then realize the reason you got to that end result is because you're doing all these things, and you need to keep doing those things to keep it. Otherwise, you'll lose it just as fast as you gained it. So this is another framework a person can use to get over the procrastination and self-sabotage.
I love this. So there's 4 things that Brian Cam just gave us. Some people are stuck in the idea route. You have idea after idea after idea. Pause and kind of go, which of these ideas are worth pursuing? And then get that and kind of put on your blinders and see that to the end before another one. So maybe find a find a way to keep dumping every other idea that comes and resist, like refuse to pursue that idea. And so maybe take your time to choose this one idea that you think is worth it and go all in. I like that. The starter that drops off midway. This is the kind of person who pays for the gym. They go for the first week, first month, January and Feb. They're like, no, first find a way to get to a mental state where you can take yourself back. Like I said, meditation was a very good one. Think about like, why this behavior? Why do you start and stop? What's happening? Maybe journal and find a way to drag yourself back to the state of you that wanted a new year, new you. The person that gets to build but never reaches. You were saying something.
For the second one, yeah. Yeah, for the second one, where a person who starts and stops, the trick for them is to, anytime they fall off, to just jump right back on it. And if they fall off again, jump right back on. If they fall off again, jump right back on until they get to the end.
But if you never stop, if you never meditate, if you never journal, you won't know that you've dropped off. You will just keep moving. And so I think
Yeah.
what he's saying is interrupt, you're busy, and find a way to catch your milestones. Like every evening, find a way to catch yourself going, am I still on track? And if you've dropped, kind of drag yourself back. Or find the reason why you started and start all over again. And the person who never gets to the finish line, there's a muscle to be built. Nothing gets done unless we have a muscle for it. So if you never get to the finish line, we need to build the muscle. The person who finishes but slides right back to their old self, there's a muscle that needs to be built there as well. I feel like there's a lot in there. I feel like there's identity shifts. I feel like there's a lot in there, but I like the idea that whatever you're not doing, you don't have. My internet is playing up. I don't know why. And so what I pick is whatever we are not able to do, we don't have the muscle for. But I like the phases. Are you stuck in idea phase? Are you a starter, but you don't get far? Do you actually go and you just don't finish? Or do you actually get to the summit and then you're like, oh my God, I've achieved, and you bounce right back? This really explains why people can't keep weight off. Like you get to the size, but then you forget that it was the movement and the food and whatever that thing you did that got you there. Everyone can be a one-hit wonder, but can you stay there for the longest time? What's the price for staying successful?
Wow. And that's why I was saying that success is harder to keep than to achieve.
What did we miss in as far as the brain and resistance and beating procrastination and getting out of our own way and understanding these mechanisms so that we can work with them, so that we can build systems around them, so that we can get our wants and take them to the bank, or maybe even decide which ones are worth pursuing and which ones are not. And so what did we miss there? That would be a very good to sum up the conversation. Or where do we need to go that we haven't gone, which is very crucial for the person who needs your work to understand? Am I gone? Like my internet is that bad that you can't hear me now? I don't know.
There is something that's very important, and we did touch on it, but I think it'll be helpful to expand on it. And you had asked, how can someone understand the resistance? You know, I had mentioned my course, but I also want to give a technique that can give them answers right away and very clearly. So one thing that I think that will be helpful to expand on is to understand that when resistance shows up, it doesn't tell us that it's showing up. It doesn't tell us why it's holding us back. Our resistance doesn't tell us that our mind is holding us back or why. It just stops us from doing things. And usually we fall into avoidance behavior. And so and what I call it the tricks of resistance. So it's really important to understand the tricks of resistance and identify them. Because when you can identify the tricks, you know that you're in resistance. And when you know you're in resistance, you have more awareness to shift course or change gears. And one of the tricks is something I learned about when I was in South Africa. In South Africa, I heard a woman speak about her journey of addiction. And she described a pattern that many addicts fall into that she herself fell into. She said many addicts know what they're doing is wrong. When they're searching for the next hit, a part of them knows that they should stop. So do you know what prevents them from stopping? It's a sneaky trick that keeps them perpetually stuck in their addiction. They say, after the next hit, I'll stop. After the next one, I'll stop. I just need one more hit right now, but after, I'll stop. And when they say it, they truly believe after next hit, they'll stop. In their mind, they're absolutely convinced after the next one, they'll stop. Does this pattern sound familiar to you? And the reason I ask is because I know everyone listening here does this in some area of their life. As soon as a want or desire comes up, a part of their mind will say, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it this week. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. I'll do it next time. And when they say it, they're absolutely convinced they'll do it tomorrow or next time. But when the tomorrow or next arrives, they push it off to the next and next and next until one of two things happens. One is that they're married, have two kids, a stressful job, and as a result, no more time, or they completely forget the goal altogether. So it's really important that a person understand that if they have a habit of saying next or later or tomorrow, there's a good chance that it won't be next, later, or tomorrow. And it's just a resistance way of keeping them from doing the thing. Because if it wasn't resistant, they would have done it and gotten over it. So this is what I mean by tricks. And our mind has all sorts of tricks up its sleeve to keep us from doing things. And we need to be very aware of those tricks. And again, I go through in detail dozens of tricks our own brain is playing on us in my course if people are interested. But just know that just because resistance stops you doesn't mean that it's going to tell you or give you a reason. You have to be aware of their tricks. And another technique that I want to share with the audience that can help people understand what the resistance is. It's very simple. And I would like to actually do it with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what is something that you are aspiring for or like looking to get to? Not something you already have, but what is it that you would like? Maybe it's to lose weight, maybe it's to grow your business or
I think
whatever it is.
I've gained about 4 kilos, and I have
Okay.
an alarm clock in my body that says time to lose weight. And so I may look like I'm in shape, which is cool, but I do have my own internal clock that wants me to lose, say, 3 inches in my waist. And
Yeah.
so I do
Okay.
want to go back to, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I'm now 65. I probably want to go back to 60 or 50 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to get back to your ideal weight?
Yeah. My ideal weight, which I don't know when it will stop being my ideal weight, but I have
Yeah.
this identity that I'm a 30, 32, and I weigh below 60. For some reason, that's my identity.
Yeah. Okay. So I am okay. I'm going to try something.
Mhm.
So a great way for a person to understand what the resistance is
Mm,
to take what they want to achieve or what they
mm,
want to have and
mm,
create a self-talk statement about having it. So for you, it would be, I am my ideal weight. I am healthy and fit. I take good care of my body. And
mm.
then what I want you to do is close your eyes and repeat those statements. Say, I am my ideal weight. I am healthy and fit.
I'm 55 kgs. I am super healthy and fit.
Okay. Now, what gets triggered when you say that? What are some thoughts that come up? Keep saying it and you'll notice the
Mm.
thoughts.
What is coming up for me is you can't. Like, you absolutely can, but you're not. Right now, you're not. But you
Okay.
absolutely can if you just do whatever. Like, I know what to do
Keep going.
actually. Yeah.
Keep your eyes closed and just keep repeating those statements. And I just want to know
Mm.
what starts to come up. So say, I am my ideal weight. I am healthy and
My
fit.
ideal weight, and I'm in my perfect shape. What
Keep
am I
saying it.
supposed to say?
Just
My
keep
ideal
saying it.
weight, that's like below 60 kilograms. I
Yeah. So say, I am healthy and fit. I am my ideal
mm,
weight. I am healthy
I'm
and fit.
healthy
I
and
am my
fit. My ideal weight. I'm healthy and fit. My ideal weight. I'm healthy and fit. My ideal weight. I am healthy and fit. I am my ideal weight. I'm healthy
so it's
and
coming up.
fit. Nothing
What's your
much
mind?
other than of course you can. It's something like of course you can. Nothing
Okay.
else is
What
coming
else?
up. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going. Yeah.
My ideal weight. I am healthy and fit. I am my ideal weight, and I am super healthy and fit. I am my ideal weight. I am super healthy and fit. I am my ideal weight. I don't know. I am super healthy and fit. I'm just using the kilograms. Kilograms is something in my head. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I am super healthy and fit indeed. I actually I'm extremely careful with what I eat. But I think my body is one of those which just puts on and then puts off and then puts on and puts off. And so when I am going through that, first of all, I really believe that I'm healthy and fit because I do the stuff, I walk and stuff like that. But the weight that I want is not the weight that I have. I'm probably 5 to 7 kilograms out.
Yeah.
And that is not something that I believe to be true. But that is something that I believe is within my reach. So I don't know what I'm supposed to get from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe because you think it's within your reach, it's not working as I wanted it to. So this was not the best example. This is why,
but
like,
if
doing
I
something
were
on
to
the fly.
say, I make $1 million a day in my business, that might look different because that probably is a different monster. If I was to
So
say,
is that a real goal that you have though?
$1 million a day in my business, that's really not a goal. 100K
Well,
a day could be a goal. $1 million a day is not an identity I have wrapped around myself and my business. And so I don't know
but you
if
have 100K.
100K a day, no, but I believe I can have 100K a day, or yeah.
Let's try with that. So close your eyes and say, I'm making 100K a day in my business.
I make 100 grand a day in my business. I don't know, impacting millions of lives. I make 100K a day in my business, and I'm changing millions of lives. I am making 100K a day, and I am impacting millions of lives. I am making.
Let's just say what's coming up, what's being triggered.
No, you're not.
There you go. There you go. So this is a much better example. So this is how we can find out what our unconscious resistance are. We take what we want to achieve, we create a self-talk statement, and we repeat the statement, and the mind will start telling you, no, you're not. You're ugly. You're this, you're that. It's because of when you were 5 years old, somebody laughed at you, and you don't want that to happen again. And you'll start to see what your resistance are. So
I will have to try this when I have more time. I think it'll be interesting. Because it's saying no, and I'm not yet getting to the place where it tells me why it believes I'm no, but it's saying no, you're definitely no. But
exactly. So we just hit the surface of it. And we are on a podcast, so there's probably some consciousness going on with you. But if you did it on your own, your mind will start telling you why. And it could even go into like deep memories from a long time ago of when, like I said, someone laughed at you, made fun of you, a teacher said you weren't smart enough or good enough. And those are all those cues telling you of why your brain is creating resistance.
That's really cool. I think I don't really mind if it came up, like, I don't mind. But I think that there's more time that is required to process and go there. If it was to come up here, like, I don't mind. Like, it's fine. I'm a human being. I get issues. And if they come up and they can show you that I am like,
you got issues, perfect, I got issues, everyone's got issues.
So I don't care for that. But I think that there would be more time required for the process than we have right now. But this is super cool. Take the thing you want, say you want it, give yourself time, let your brain kind of process. I'm going to be doing this. Let your brain process and tell you why it doesn't believe that this is within access for you. Cool. Brian, take me to what you do.
What's really cool with this technique is, I just want to say what's really cool with this technique is you get direct answer from your brain. It's not someone telling you what they think, or it's not someone forcing some ideas that was for them. It's you getting answers from you. And it's usually things that you wouldn't be thinking about or you wouldn't be able to come up consciously on your own. It's like a direct access to the resistance that's going on inside. So yeah.
I love it. It's like accessing your inner brilliance. I like that.
Yeah.
Brian, tell me more about what you have in the back end, how you support people, how it works. Because I would like for people to access some of that if they're like, oh my God, I like this guy. I wonder what he has to offer.
Yeah. So my name is Cam Knight, and people can reach out to my website at camknight.com. That's KAMKNIGHT.com. I have a course called Conquer Internal Resistance, which goes much deeper than our conversation here. And I feel like our conversation here was quite deep, to help people understand what their resistance is, why it's there, and how it's showing up. But most importantly, how to move past it so they can do the things that they want or have been trying to do in their life. And I also have a free gift called 5 Ways to End Procrastination and Self-Sabotage. And they can get that from my website as well. Again, that's KAMKNIGHT.com. And I also do one-on-one coaching. I gave this one simple technique, but I have some other techniques that help people go into their unconscious and see their resistance, how they're being held back, how it formed, and everything. They get to see it all without anyone telling them or kind of forcing their own ideas upon them. And if someone's interested in that, they can reach out to me at cam@camknight.com.
I love that. Ultimately, the biggest thing you can do, other than going to Cam Knight's website and checking out what he has, the biggest thing you can do really is think through your friends, think through your circles, think through your family, and go, who is the person that is so inspired and so pumped that never gets stuff done? I want you to take a moment and think, who is the person that when they are talking to you, you feel like they're going to change the world? But when you see them months later, they're still in the same place talking. Who are the people that we say have a good talk, but they don't do stuff? Think through, who do you know? If you're close enough and they're in your family, maybe it's your spouse. When they open their mouth to pray, they're praying for the thing they want. But when the day starts, they're doing everything but that thing. Who do you know? I want you to pause, and I want you to share this episode with them in their private space and kind of say, this conversation was amazing and I thought you'd love it. Let them go through and kind of see how Cam talks about the resistance beat, because I feel like resistance is like a serious killer of people's dreams. And if we care enough about people, let's get them to the conversation. Let's get them to the awareness, because they probably think they have curses. In my country where I come from, people believe there's witchcraft. And so someone may believe sincerely that somebody is witchcrafting them. But really, sometimes it's the resistance, it's the internal mechanism, it is the trauma, it is the programming, it is the values. It's all of these things. Like for me, where I'm born, no one has ever made 100 grand in a year. Like, let me give you context. $1 is 3,750. $10,000, that's 36 million. 100 grand, that's 370 million. There's no one who's making that. Not the MP, and maybe not the president. And so for me to see that in my business, first of all, I had to get a new identity of what is possible for myself. And I didn't know what was happening for me. But when I hit some numbers, my brain went, no, this is not good for you. There's no one in your clan that has done it. There's no one in your country that is doing it. So somehow it had to get a way to reset me back to the numbers I know. And so I do not know what's happening for you, but really this is a very good conversation, because for me, the way I'm getting it is that the moment you get past your identity, your brain wants to bring you back to the identity that is running in your system. And so I don't know who you know that needs to be blessed, but stop and just share this episode with them. Because the way that this podcast works, I am really just a translator for the soul. That's my work. I get people's messages and I translate it in the ordinary world. Comes talent or gift is he's learned, studied the brain and knows resistance and can help you search in every corner to tackle the bit that is keeping you from going after the things you want. And kind of that's how you get out of your own way. You're on this podcast and your role in this is one, you're the vessel for the message. And all you need is one person. And if that person shares it with another person, and that person shares it with another person, that is how we beat marketing. That's how we beat ads. That's how we beat anything that has ever existed on the planet. And that's what we're doing here on this podcast. And I'm excited that you become a part of this equation. And I really appreciate your job in this part. Come, we're getting to the end of the conversation, and I would love for you to give us your final words of wisdom.
So my final words is for people to understand wanting doesn't equate to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll take the necessary steps to do it. And it comes down to this part of the brain that is designed to hold you back, and it's actively working to hold you back. And unless you understand what resistance is, why it's there, and how it shows up in your life, it'll be difficult to move forward. Only when you understand these things is when is progress possible. If you don't understand these things, maybe the reason why you're having challenges and difficulty in life.
I love that. I love that. So that's it. That's what we had today. And whatever platform you're on, just grab the app of that platform and try and do whatever the thing they allow you to do. Are they allowing you to subscribe? Are they allowing you to follow? Are they allowing you to rate? Are they allowing you to review? Are they allowing you to comment? Doing all of those things puts us on a map and tells the world that we have something that is life-changing that is happening on this platform. And so your participation in doing all of those things helps more than you know. So simply take a minute and do whatever the thing you're allowed to do right now, because that's what you can contribute to the platform. Appreciate you. Have a great day. And thank you again for the gifts of your attention and time. I will see you on another episode. And Kam, thank you so much for spending the last I don't know how many hours pouring into us and sharing all of your secrets, your wisdom, your experiences. We really appreciate you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me on.
All righty. Until next time, my friend. Take care. That is it, my friend. To listen to more exclusive interviews like this one, simply go to the World's Best Kept Secret podcast.com and select interviews based on preferred topic.